This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Brueski.
We're talking Rex Heuermann right now with retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer. And not just about Rex anymore, as this thing has grown its own set of tentacles as well. And the implications, more specifically, about Police Chief James Burke, arrested just the other day on soliciting a sex worker, the very same thing that Heuermann is alleged to have done, and then murdered them. And for many, many years, this case was a cold case, but it appears it really didn't have to be. Can you speak to that, the corruption, the 10 years, and how all of this was able to go on and linger for so long when there was apparently quite a bit of information and evidence that would have pointed them to Heuermann much earlier?
It is so concerning to me because you stated it well, Tony. This case could have been solved so much earlier, even though we know back in that time mitochondrial DNA couldn't be used to make the links. There was so much other evidence there. The car, the vehicle, the truck description, witnesses, the burlap bags, so much that could have been looked into that was finally looked in by this task force. As for Mr. Burke, recall he was arrested with, after beating quite significantly a junkie who broke into his truck and stole sex toys and pornographic, pornographic items, and served over 40 months in federal prison for that. And then, of course, as you said, he was just arrested for these sex workers. So it would seem he's had quite a history of sexual deviant behavior. And was that part of the reason that he just closed down this investigation? Recall, he kicked the FBI out. We can't be involved in these cases with no interstate nexus or federal nexus unless invited. And so he had a lot of control and his own sexual perversions. Did that intersect somehow with one of these other victims? Was he involved in any other way? It's very concerning, and I hope this task force gets to the bottom of it.
Is it a red flag when a local jurisdiction kicks the FBI out and doesn't want their assistance, doesn't want all the expertise and the plethora of avenues for processing material and stuff? They just say, we're good, we're happy, we don't need any of this. How does that sit with you when that sort of a situation occurs?
Well, sometimes it happens strictly because there is no relationship between the local authority and the bureau authority that's in that area. So that happens sometimes. They just have no connection. And of course, locals don't want the FBI coming in, quote unquote, like the Die Hard episode, taking over the investigation, FBI, we're here. Those days are really long over. Most FBI offices work very well with their local jurisdictions. But yes, it is a red flag, in my opinion. It happened in Delphi. And I think that was a split in that case because of two different beliefs in terms of how the case was going to be handled, who the possible subject was, all of that. So, they have the venue. They kicked out the FBI. In this case, maybe the same thing. But it would seem now you have a chief that didn't want the FBI there probing on and finding what really happened to all of those 11 victims.
And it makes you wonder how many other Rex Heuermann types have been overlooked as well. I would think almost everything that occurred during his administration or while he was there as the chief is going to have to be looked at with a very close eye, because if there was something that would have possibly pointed a finger towards James Burke, not necessarily involved in these crimes, but involved in that world for his own enjoyment, if you will, there might be far more people that are sitting right there under the radar that haven't been looked at.
Yes, it's such a great point, because if this was something he was trying to hide, in other words, his illicit vocations on the side, if he was trying to hide that, imagine all of the other cases, all of the other sex workers, as an example, that might have information on him, and that, cases were otherwise set aside or weren't properly investigated. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what all is found.
How in control is it or was Chief James Burke in this, in terms of acting alone, in terms of saying we're doing this, we're not doing that? Is this something where really he did have all the power to say yay or nay to something, or would there have to be others involved as well that either looked the other way or went along with it in some way, shape, or form of not investigating some of these things because they wanted to go along with him?
Well, the police, the FBI, all police organizations, if you will, are really quasi-military, meaning when your boss says, go out in that intersection and stand on your head, the idea is that you do it without question. And so when he said, FBI, you're gone, folks, that's going to the cold case room. We've got a lot of other items we need to be working. That is what happened. And underlings don't question. And if you do question, you could be called insubordinate. You can be written up for insubordination. Your hopes of advancing or anything could just be pushed aside. And the other thing is, you would like to think that the people in charge are making decisions based on good reasoning and not on personal issues and hiding something. You would like to think that anyway.
Sure.
So no, the buck stopped with him, Tony.
Yeah. And everybody would like to think that everyone in those positions is doing the right thing and working for the greater good and not in sort of selfish way. In this case, it appears on the surface that James Burke very much was acting in a selfish way. As the task force continues to investigate this, depending on what they find, could there be additional punishment or charges or anything that can be brought against or should be brought against James Burke? Should they find willful ignorance or really just a cover up on his part not to look into some of these things for his own fear of being caught in his own misdeeds?
Absolutely. There's public corruption statutes and federal public corruption statutes that if, witnesses were paid off, if cases were overlooked, if incentives were given to other, detectives to close cases down. If that can be proven, there are definite statutes that can be followed up on. And I think we're going to see a very hard look at a lot of different cases that could have intersected with the Lisk murders.
And hopefully that will lead to possibly some new convictions and actually finding those responsible as they continue to dig into that. Very, very interesting new direction or spider leg off of this whole case.
Yes, it really is. It's something. I mean, you would have think he served, 40 plus months in federal custody. And it's what people don't understand is it doesn't matter what the addiction is. If it's a sexual depravity type addiction that you have, some people just cannot control themselves. And we saw it with Rex Heuermann, and we saw it with Mr. Burke.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
Want more? Start binging on all of our true crime podcasts right now through Apple Podcasts and get an ad-free experience when you sign up to be a True Crime Today Premium Plus member exclusively on Apple Podcasts.
More of the Hidden Killers Podcast dropping soon.
Press subscribe now.